Okay, so I think now's probably a good time to get started. It's a couple of minutes past the hour, so everyone's joined. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Butterfield, Innovation Manager at Muda Water Products. It's a pleasure to host this week's webinar by the Water Loss Specialist Group. Today's webinar is from Ashok, who will present on transforming local communities for NRW reduction in India. Ashok has over 40 years experience in water utilities and has been actively advising utilities in water management. Ashok is currently a member of the National Task Force, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs within the Government of India. So I'm going to hand over to Ashok now to begin his presentation. But if anyone has any questions throughout, just please drop them in the chat and then we'll address them at the end. Thanks, Ashok.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon to people from outside India and good morning to people from India. It's nice I got this opportunity from IWA, Water Loss Group. I addressed a meeting 2 years back, and I'm sure I was in San Sebastian with the people. And I need to thank especially Stuart as well as Gary, with whom I worked for more than 10 years in various projects that we were contemplating, especially in India. And it gives me great pleasure to speak on this particular topic. I would like to speak on this topic, which I've coined as planning the transformations of ULBs, urban local bodies in India, towards NRW reduction. Still, NRW is not well known in India, primarily, and there is not much of a focus. So I wanted to bring in this focus through this presentation and taking this case study of Chennai Metro Water, with whom I worked for the last 2 years. Chennai is one of the largest cities in India, having a population close to about 8.5 million, with about 1.25 million consumer connections. It has a geographical area of about 1,000 square kilometers and one of the largest cities. And total water supplied is about 1021 million liters. Chennai is known for its motor car industries, one of the manufacturing hubs of India. The largest number of concentration of water-intensive factories are in and around Chennai, especially in the outskirts of the city. And primarily, this city is known for its commercial enterprise and manufacturing. And it is all spread across, and water security is an important issue. Chennai, by virtue of its positioning in India as a coastal city, it has this deficit of water. It cannot meet all the demand. So a lot of filling stations are available where water, especially potable water, is being transported daily through primarily lorries and other modes of transport to reach up to the customers, especially outside the core area of the city. The length of the distribution is about roughly 6,000 kilometers and is increasing because, as you see, the core city was only 526 square kilometer. It got expanded to about 1,010 square kilometers the last few years, the last decade. So some of the water supply schemes are just being commissioned. About 25 of them have come up and 23 of them have been integrated into the city water supply. 2 or 3 of them are still getting supplied through what you call as the tanker system of water supply that we have in India. This is a project which I wanted to come in. It was a unique modeling which was done. I was part of the National Task Force. They asked me to look at Chennai, and both Chennai Utility as well as World Bank engaged me for this exercise of looking at meeting some of their, because this, unfortunately, the city never had metering, had a small amount of metering, only about 5% metering for the entire 1.25 million customers. Household connections, 8.5 million is the population, but they have a very bad experience over the years, especially with the mechanical meters. So really speaking, the World Bank wanted me to look at Chennai because they adopted Chennai as a city of their partnership. They have a citywide partnership here wherein they are bringing in the funding from the World Bank under a scheme called performance-based scheme, which is based on achievement of performance objectives to get the funding from the World Bank. So Chennai itself has a number of commercial multi-story complexes, mixed residential uses. More than 100,000 consumers are of this nature, and they wanted first thing to look at it. So we did start doing a trial about 2 years back with various technologies across the world. We had very many discussions with potential contractors and concessionaires, including the big ones like Suez, Veolia, and people like that. And then we came out to the requirement that we would have a unique system wherein we would actually come out with a model which will imbibe both the metering as a service, the mass model, as well as the hybrid annuity model, primarily to take care of the risk, technical risk of the utility itself. The utility had some capacity issues. They were not up to date on technology. So they wanted to have a long-term O&M by the concessionaire himself to manage the entire asset. And that is how this project came into being. So the need of the project arose from the World Bank requirements, as you can see here. Primarily, there were two major investors in the city partnership, both World Bank and another funding company called AIIB, which is part of the Chinese consortium, but it is more prominent now as World Bank. They gave a set of what I call as a DLI. This is called as Distribution Linked Indicators. That means you have to give a target for, they want to bring in reforms within the utility in Chennai, and they gave us the DLIs to really show that these targets could be met in a couple of years, and then we can draw the money from the World Bank. So they had coined these, what you see in the screen, these DLIs. And primary ones that I had worked on was 7.3, which is basically 90% metering of all the high rise and commercial in next 3 years' time. 7.5 is to also look at the low rise, which is up to the third story of a typical apartment. And then to bring down the non-revenue water loss. We do not know the baseline as such, but it is one of the important thing is the baseline is about to be established now by a set of consultants who are working on the project. So actually, based on that, there will be a reduction that is being called for in the next 3 years' time. And that program should sustain itself as an NRW project for the funding to come in. And similarly, increase in cost recovery from the user charges is also equally important. So if you really see that some amount of money has come towards institutional strengthening, but the main thing is the point number 2, enhancing quality of urban services, which is basically reduction of NRW and performance-based contracts associated with that. And the metering, which covers these DLIs 7.3, 7.5, and 7.6, is about $35 million. Overall, about $90 million is what has been committed. When we started this project 2 years back, Chennai Metro was one of the earliest utilities in India, which came out with a metering policy. Primarily because this policy, there needs to be a policy because so far it was all unmetered. And nobody, the customers were not educated enough to really understand how a volumetric tariff would work. But Chennai itself, by the bylaws and being a very old city, it is the second oldest corporation in the world. Basically, the city mayor still has a key role in the city, and it's the second oldest city in terms of the corporation being here, and the city mayor, which is in the world actually. So we formed a metering policy, which was enunciated in the year 2022, and it has got even updated recently too by me. Primarily, it is used to look at non-revenue water reduction from whatever is the baseline and to increase the cost recovery. Efficient use of water, you all know there is a deficit in the country, and to ensure that fairness and equity to all customers are there, and to set out the roles between the utility itself and its commercial and its consumers in relation to the installation of meters, the billing system, the maintenance, and things like that, which are all defined in it. And then also going in for 100% metering in a slow process. Mind you, I told you there are 1.25 million customers, and right now we are looking at the first 100,000 installation, especially the high-end customers, not the industries, but the commercial customers and the semi-commercial customers who constitute a large part of the revenue of Chennai. Chennai has got a tariff about 145 rupees. That means 1.5 US dollar is a tariff, because our tariffs are pretty high compared to rest of the country, because Chennai, this is for the industries primarily, this tariff of 1.5 US dollars. It's primarily because Chennai is dependent not only on surface water, which is all coming from outside the state, traveling long distance, pumping, plus also it has got huge desalination facilities. There are 4 major desalination facilities in Chennai. Hence, the cost of water production is pretty high, and we don't have much of groundwater or other natural sources. So only it's either the sea, or we have to bring water mostly from outside the state. So that is one of the key things, is to look at these customers, especially the high-rise customers and the semi-commercial and the private customers, especially the large commercial offices that came into as an objective. I told you Chennai has got 5% metering historically. One of the best meter suppliers have been servicing this about 5-6 years back. But the experience of meter itself has been good. The product quality has been good. But unfortunately, that as a system, the billing system, the ability to retrieve the data on an AMR, and ability to read meters in a very specific application in Chennai, especially most of the core area, 526 square kilometer area, the water connections are given 5 feet below the ground, because Chennai has got a flat terrain. So all the water that is being sent is managed from 15 large distribution zones, and they are actually pumped on a daily basis, with the result that sometimes the last mile connectivity does not have the flow. And secondly, in order to get the pressure, the pipes would have to be laid underground by about 5 feet. And that is where the house service connections is being given, and the chamber is also built. Unfortunately, Chennai is subject to a lot of climate issues in the last few years. We had a tidal wave sometime back, a few years back. We had a tsunami also about a decade back. It totally devastated the city. But one of the things is that we get these unseasonal rainfall, which actually clogs into floods the chambers. So the meters would have to be, in spite of being IP68, meters are not being able to be read. And that is why this program, which they did on mechanical meter, was not a success. It is part of the smart meter initiative about 5 years back. So we structured a contract which was imbibing both mass meter as a service, which is very, very popular in the US. More than 40-50 utilities in US, I've studied them. They all use the mass principle of taking the product that they want and getting the product to be delivered through the entire life cycle, with everything done by the meter manufacturer and his contractor. The other model in India is called hybrid annuity model. This is how in India, the infrastructure growth is very, very high, especially our airports are being built, our ports are being built, and we have a huge railway network, plus we have a huge road network. All these projects have come up mostly on a basis called hybrid annuity model, where the government client and the federal government commits to a certain percentage, say 40% of the capex, and they actually bring it as a grant, and the balance is given. The concessionaire is expected, the developer is expected to bring in the balance money, close it through private capital, his full funding requirement, and take this in various annuity models every quarter or every year, based on interest costs that are added as openly and transparently as given by the Nodal Bank of India. So here we structured a contract imbibing both these things, and this is a very unique contract, probably even in the world. There are not many full applications. HAM is not very popular in developed countries, but in India, most of the large plants of the Ganga Basin, the wastewater treatment plants, the huge ones, are all being built on HAM basis. And I've imbibed this mass model also into this to bring in the technical excellence and to make this risk-free for the client themselves. I told you some time back, they don't have capacity, they don't understand technology as such, and they don't know how to run the system. So if they were to be like the earlier contract where 5% of the meters were supplied and it didn't work because the contractor just left the site after 2 years, it is a very bad situation and they are not able to take it up and run it. So we designed this model for 2 years, basically 2 years of installation and 10 years of operation and maintenance, where the risk of the asset belongs to the concessionaire or the contractor, and the water supply risk, the ability to supply water to the end client, is by the Chennai utility itself. And the payments is being done in about 8 installments over a period of time as per the interests that are already declared. I'll go more into it at a later stage. This project, why I wanted to showcase this project is that in India is embarking in a big way in this new funding scheme by Ministry of Housing and Urban Water called as Amrut 2. This is actually for the about 4,800 cities of India, small and big cities, are all being funded by this big program of 40 billion US dollars, out of which we have already spent some 20 billion US dollars in various projects, and these projects are, some of them are in the final stages of completion. So what happens is that in this scheme, the government of India has opened out its guideline in terms of application of technology. They have imbibed newer technologies. They are telling openly that to bring in the best world-class technology into the urban water scenario for all these 4,800 cities. Also, they are giving output-based financing. And one very important thing is to reduce the NRW and to report on a monthly basis the water balance. Unfortunately, the water balance in India, still in spite of spending so much of money of 20 billion, we are going for so many schemes, so the water balance is still not refined. And it is also that, very often it so happens that the NRW, in most of the cases in India, the baseline or most of the cities, it is unknown or it is just a guesstimate. So what we did is, in order to have a clear objective to the concessionaire, we thought of introducing 3 types of activities. One is the planning activity, next is the technical activity, and third is actually the operations activity. So we feel the technical planning and the commercial, if it's all imbibed, it could give an integrated utility operation. So actually speaking, the consumer survey is the most important thing. Chennai has got a very, very good digitized GIS available, but some of the last mile connections in terms of customer validation, in terms of customer name, the sizes of the pipes that they're using, the type of connections they're using is still not clear. So we expected people to do this survey, and that is how it will happen to other cities also in India. And through this methodology, I wanted to tell you that how even these 24/7 or the drink from tax schemes take a very long time to implement in India. We have a handful of schemes running, but most of them are at a 50% execution level, and still the benefits of the scheme have not gone back to the public or to the utility. Really speaking, this scheme, which I'm introducing now, a mix of ham and mass with the metering approach, at least will have little bit of control on your NRW and also bring down your losses if you're able to do it through smart metering approach. So one of the objective was the technical side is any cities, because we are inherited with the old network, more than 40 years old, the condition assessment is a very important thing. Validation of the connections versus a meter, plot versus property, and also the apartments, many of the apartments in the outside the city limits, outside the 526 square kilometer area, the balance of 500 square kilometers is all being done. The water is being taken from the ground and this water is depleting. That is why the utility, Chennai utility, is now asking mandatorily to lay surface pipe connections to each of these households in terms of high-rise building and also direct supply, and also to map what is the amount of tanker movement, that is the temporary water that is being sent to each of these locations, is to be mapped and the volume noted. So the consumer indexing becomes a very important thing in terms of semi-commercial, commercial classification, water intensive, institutional connection. So that you can draw the figure in terms of what is the volume of water that could be supplied and what that could be sold. Primarily, Chennai wants to do it because the large facility of 400 billion liter desalination facility will be ready in the next 2 years. It's been funded by the Japanese, JICA, and a very large Indian contractor has got the one of the very big desalination companies, a multinational company from India, Chennai, has obtained this business. And in 2 years' time, they will bring extra 400 MLD of water into the Chennai grid. So Chennai would be surplus of water at that time, wherein they need to supply and also make that project bankable. So the ward-wise regularization, I told you Chennai is divided into 15 zones, very large zones for an area of 1,000 square kilometer with 8.5 million population and 1.25 million household connections. They are handling only by 15 zonal operations, which is very, very huge command area. So we thought of doing this on ward-wise application in terms of regularization and coming out with a customer outreach program to educate them on volumetric tariff, demand management, and how the meter itself will help them to bring down that demand. So that is how we have imbibed in this contract. And also the establishment of the customer relationship management and meter testing also forms an important part of it. This also got a good component out of this, whatever figure I told you about the World Bank committed funding, which again, on top of it, the Chennai Metro Water would also be, the government would also be investing some money into this. There is a fair amount of civil work that is involved in laying some of the feeder mains, especially in the added area, which constitutes basically a population close to about 2.5 million. And also looking at newer areas, newer customers, new connections to be given, and also the house service connections to be implemented by means of an MDPE piping. And in some of the areas, especially in the core areas, we would require the chamber to be built underground because the water connection is given 5 feet below the ground. So with all these things, when we analyzed the pilots and we analyzed the trials that we have done in the over 2 years, we zeroed on smart metering and the implementation of smart systems to cater to the city's requirement. And these are the consumers which are paying customers. Today, Chennai Metro earns from these 100,000 connections, roughly about 75 crores. And within 2 years, we did the analysis. The figures were almost doubling to about 150 crores. And at a level of a 10-year horizon, it was looking quite lucrative. And they will find an avenue to actually have their water pumped from the desalination plant into this whole area. So if you really see this, we have structured the O&M, and this is how any other city would have to do it like that, is to structure the O&M into a 10-year KPI with a performance linked, because the operator would have to stay till the last, ensure that the assets work properly, and also it delivers the type of KPIs that has been set in, which I'll tell you. Also, it involves building of the payment gateway, and the entire thing would be done on a digital platform, which has been thought of with periodic maintenance by the operator himself. So in short, the deliverables of the project is looking into the customer data validation, the survey part of it in the first 3 months, coming out with the commercial data validation and discrepancy management methodology and output report, coming out with a network report in terms of network management, how we will communicate between the meters and the master station, how will you integrate it to the billing system, placement of meters itself, and then online customer service and online billing to the payment gateway that needs to be built in, and maintaining the whole thing under a strict KPI, which I'll come back later, for 10 years. So if you see the technical analysis, all of you are aware, I don't have to go into a great deal of depth, but for the people who are overseas and who are participating in this webinar of IWA, India is predominantly, 95% of India is predominantly in intermediate water supply system. And you know the type of shock loads it has on the meters. Especially the meter life is very, very small in India, especially the mechanical meters. And people are not knowing that the meters have to be replaced once in 3 years or 5 years. And very often there is a lot of mortality, what you call as the infant mortality itself, because there is continuous spiking of the water because of the fluctuation in the water supply due to the intermittent supply. And more so, the mechanical meters are, we have noticed, at least from our experience that we have seen across all cities, is that a lot of tampering also happens. So we designed this thing, and this has been come out as a very good guideline in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has brought out a guideline, which is basically the engineering guideline for the all the utilities and cities in India. And everybody would have to conform to the guideline. And we have actually given and studied all these things deeply. We took about 3 years to write this document. And we came out very clearly. We mapped the error curve with the flow rate, because all of us know that meters are implemented as per the flow rate available. And you can just see how much variation is there. Especially for the low flow rates, these mechanical meters do not really read. And that is the experience of Chennai and as well as very many cities in India. And that is why we went for a very, very straight curve, as you can see, which is the static or the smart meters that we have seen. All of you know the metrological characteristic of a meter. I don't have to explain, especially the Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So the important thing is that the ability to accurately measure low flow rates. I said Chennai is a very large area, 1,000 square kilometers, and divided by 15 zones, just 15 zones for 1,000 square kilometers of 8.5 million population. So you can just imagine how much water that the end customers will have, especially tail end of the pipe. Tail end consumers hardly will get any pressure. So especially these are all well defined in our standards as well as the ISO 4064 in terms of Q1, the lowest flow rate, in terms of Q2, the transient flow rate, Q3, the permanent flow rate, and Q4, the overload capacity of the meter itself. So what has happened is we know that in India, these studies are not done scientifically. With the result, there is a huge amount of failure of meters. So that is why we studied all these things before we actually came to a decision that we will implement smart metering. And this is the way that Indian government has also been thinking in the future. As I'm just speaking, I wanted to tell you, I'm part of the national, I consult and mentor the national committee from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, which actually lends out the grant, the federal funding to all the states. And in the next few weeks, you will be having an incentive to reduce NRW. And they're giving a special grant to various states which can imbibe and take targets, define their baseline of NRW in a quick manner after a study of about 6 months, and do this project within a year time to show reduction to avail of an extra funding from the federal government. Compared to the inherent mechanical technology to the smart meter technology, one of the important thing is the low operating range, which I told you as a dynamic ratio. These meters, even the best of meters around the world, which are being imported in the mechanical side, cannot work less than 16 liters per hour. I showed here as the normal general meters manufactured in India will be accurate only with R160 metrology class, which is 30 liters. That is 90% of the India's 17, 18 meter manufacturers will comply. A few of them would be in the range of 16 liters per hour. But that doesn't suffice for India's large cities and networks. We don't have DMAs. We don't have the pressure systems in India. So with the result, the meters go 100 even after being implemented. So that is why lots of controversies with the customers happen. Whereas these new smart meters are able to go at R500 metrology and also low flow, and it is absolutely at about 5 liters per hour. So, and also the life of these meters, there is a guarantee that we have done asked for the meter manufacturers in all our meetings the last 2 years of a 15-year guarantee, which is being, and also we have checked these facts across India as well as the rest of the world, especially wherever smart meters are being implemented. And we are quite clear, at least 15 years it's possible, and at least 12 years for the battery life itself, if your communication systems are well commissioned and there is not frequent querying, but at least once in a month querying of the AMI or AMR system, it's very much possible. So in the new guideline, where I was one of the co-authors, we have mandated that even mechanical meters, multi-jet mechanical meters would have to have a life of 5 years. Any failure, and they have to be minimum R160 metrology classification, and they would have to be replaced if they fail within the 5 years due to any problems of meter manufacturing. And it had to be replaced freely by the contractor, concessionaire, or the meter manufacturer. And in the case of smart meters, 10 years is the minimum guarantee that we are asking, that it should be replaced within that time if anything happens. So these are some of the things that it is very important to know: the maintenance aspect of it, operating life aspects of it, and the tampering aspects of it are critical drivers for us to move towards smart meters. This is the metrological characteristics I was explaining to you in the few slides before. This is called as the dynamic ratio, which is basically Q3, the permanent flow, as defined in ISO 4064. You might ask why I'm quoting an international standard here, but Indian standards are still old. The Indian BIS standards are still getting revived, and India is a participant in the World Weight and Measures Consortium. We actually need to have all our system updated to the latest standards, and that is why today we are following this ISO 40 standard in our country, with some legal metrology also being done initially in India also, that is being certified for. So this is a very important thing, because the upper end of the accuracy curve or the lower end is extremely important, whether you are having the lower measurement of plus minus 5% or upper end plus minus 2% is extremely important. Because we didn't have all these things well enunciated earlier, and now the new manual which the ministry has promoted in March of this year, this was actually published, and this they very clearly came out with these guidelines saying that this would have to be the minimum criteria which states and utilities would have to follow in order to get the federal grant of 30%, or in some cases, as in the northeastern part of India, even 50% grant. So all these consideration of water quality being poor, intermittent water supply, flow disturbance, low pressure, deep pits have all gone into these factors. And then we are looked at the software and the communication architecture itself. Most of the India is a big known country for IT management, and we almost do the back office for most of the world-known companies in the world, especially in the utility space as well as in the non-utility space. And India is a leader in the telecommunication and the electricity markets in the world. So we thought that we will keep any of these communications in terms of the meter reading, for the proprietary meter reading data into the fixed network system or a non-fixed, either a radio-based or a non-radio-based, is what we will keep it open. And we will revisit it within 3 or 4 months based on the cost-benefit analysis that is being carried out. And that provision has been done in terms of the costing that needs to be taken care of. But also very important is to know what kind of operation costs are there. And because the tariffs are very low in India for domestic, especially in other cities. And Chennai can have a higher tariff for the commercial tariff, but it is not so for the domestic. It is the industries and the commercial tariff which actually subsidize the domestic tariff, which is even today based on flat rate, which is just about less than it's about $0.5, which is very, very low, which doesn't even recoup our production cost of water. So we have kept this open, and we have studied this worldwide, and this is how India is imbibing. Today in the Amrut, we are selling each of our 4,000 odd cities to actually imbibe new technology, and that is why I'm saying this new trigger of extra grant is coming in for people who are willing to take forward these measures of NRW reduction and show tangible results after they actually qualify the baseline, and after it's audited, and then how much reduction they bring every year. Some incentives are being worked out now, and in the next few days it will be. And that is why India will be a very huge digital market. It will be a huge market for DMAs. It will be a huge market for sensor systems, digital twins, because this new scheme is being rolled out in the next few days. I just happened to attend one such meeting only 2 days back, and I can tell you they are very bullish, and a concept note is being prepared right now. So we compared the technology in terms of various network systems across. We also taken clue from the international norms that have been followed. We found many of them are work on a fixed network system where there's a plus advantage. The meter manufacturer himself guarantees it. But we are also not averse to looking at other things, provided there is cost benefit and there is better efficiency and a lowering of the cost. So we also looked at, I know India is looking at NB-IoT also, the smart SIM to be inserted inside the meter. And of course, LoRa has been there for quite some time with mixed experiences. So we are looking at a set of concentrators, repeaters, or the gateways, and the coverage is being done for the entire city. And this is how India is evolving in the rest of the cities too. So this is the classical IWA loss calculation that has put, which people like Joe and all the people in IWA are very familiar. But in India, this is not followed so far, except for a few handful of operators, basically international operators who are doing it, and some big Indian companies like Larsen and Toubro, other people who actually do this loss calculation. These people are not educated because these are not taught in our schools, our engineering schools. And this is one of the things that I have extended this IWA classification to an extended form in terms of knowing exactly for a city the real-time water balance that would happen, especially in terms of authorized connections. What is the actual bill? What is unmetered and not billed? What is the government? What are the government customers paying? How much of public taps you are giving, non-paying? How much you are giving for firefighting purposes, and how much is going towards the illegal connection. And then the classical water loss calculation in terms of real loss and apparent loss. And what are the drivers towards this loss? Is it due to the meter problem? It is due to the billing problem? Is it due to the pressure-related operation problem? Or it is due to the leaks problem? Can also be quantified. And this MDI, the meter data infrastructure that is coming rolled out with the smart metering initiative, gives the real-time water balance, which is very, very important for a growth-oriented country like India. All the cities in India are growing, the infrastructure is growing, and that is why the real-time balancing, and that is why the government of India is coming out with this incentive. World Bank has worked in these few large cities, primarily Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, and Pune, all cities more than 10 million population, each one of them. And you can see if you go down in the 7th row, non-revenue water loss. This is a study done by ResearchGate, published by World Bank. Almost 51% loss of non-revenue in the states which have imbibed some amount of metering over the last few years, the last 1 decade or so. Except for Pune, which has gone in for smart metering the last 4 years, there is a tangible improvement. And last week, I spoke to the chief engineer of the utility who said, because of smart meter implementation, the revenues of the utilities have gone up by something like 200%. Of course, there has been resistance from a section of the public, so that requires more education itself. So if you come to the last row, something like, we lose something like $150 to $200,000 per year due to revenue loss. It's something like 150 to 300 crores per year that is being lost. And this, this is how the IWA table in a developed country is being calculated in terms of real loss, apparent loss, and the infrastructure leakage index itself is. And unfortunately, India, this is one we have not concentrated over the years. And that is the reason our revenue and expenditure do not match. Many of the cities are really not having the funds to manage the operation maintenance professionally. So that is why we feel by these initiatives of NRW NRW reduction, introduction of smart metering and digital systems and software, this could bring in that required change in the country. And some cities like Chennai, Hyderabad is very close to breaking even in the O&M operation. Similarly, Bangalore is very close to it, and Pune will achieve it, I think, by next year or so, once they finish the entire program of reform. So the financial analysis, this is a very, very deeply thought financial structure. I'm not going to talk to you much details about it because I cannot talk. I'm not the authority to talk on the commercial and on the price part of it. But I'm sure when you actually come for these various projects across the country, if they are constructed and structured on this, we'll have world-class system players coming into this market. And it's an unsaturable market. That is why for the smart metering in the electricity, India is the largest market after China in the world, in the electricity side. Similarly, India would be the biggest market for digital initiatives, smart metering, digital twins, DMA management, sensor management, analytical tools in the area of water very, very shortly. And our new guideline from the ministry has given importance to all these things. So in short, I just have highlighted the relevant points is that the revenue model is water tariff per kiloliter. And there is a tariff increase every year. Chennai has got about 8 different tariffs. It's quite well defined. But unfortunately, we are billing almost most of the customers, close to about more than 11 million, only through flat tariffs because there is no working meter in the end connections. So what we have said is we will strictly implement at least to this layer of commercial, semi-commercial, and water-intensive customers this particular smart metering, and the government itself will bring in 60% as grant of the whole project cost. I've indicated some of the figures of World Bank in the beginning of the slides, and 40% will come through the concessionaire, who in partnership with the technology provider, with the software company, with the EPC company, will bid in and bring the balance of money. And then they will take the money in over 10 years with the interest which is being paid for the money they put in, which is quite good, which is a normal thing in roads projects in India. And cash outflow is primarily to the client, or the government is basically interest on annuity payment, but they are absolved of the technical risk, which a mass program really helps. So both the parties have a level playing field, both the concessionaire, the EPC contractor or technology provider enrolled into one as a consortium, as well as the government will have a net IRR of about 15%. So the scope is primarily to look at non-domestic. Project costs are classified into civil cost. I've given you the indications. Some meter chambers would have to be done. Lots of new connections would have to be given. In the new areas, the feeder pipes would have to be laid, and they will be paid for that. Supply, installation, commissioning of smart meters, and communication infrastructure, which is very important. What choice of communication infrastructure would be determined by the operator who comes in, who would actually, and that is how it should be. All the HAM projects in India, they keep the technology open because they can imbibe the best, and they will have their own relationship with the various technology providers for a long-term guarantee and uptime of the system. Then the cloud-based software itself, the high-end system, the meter data management, billing integration, and very many customized apps, right from the O&M to the customer portal, is all being thought of. Chennai is quite advanced, and namely most of the Indian cities like Hyderabad, Bombay, Delhi, all have good ERP systems working in the background. We work with Oracle. Delhi also works with Oracle. So this integration would have to happen with the centralized system and the performance-based O&M. So the civil cost is borne by the client typically, and it could be the same thing in the rest of India. And implementation and asset performance rise with the private party, which comes in, and the supply risk will be the utility. These are some of the, out of the 100,000 odd consumer connections, which are commercial, partly commercial, private hospitals, other big commercial offices. These are the tariffs which are there. What I've highlighted in yellow there, these tariffs do not make any meaning to the utility right now. They are loss-making propositions because our cost of water itself is pretty high. But overall, if you meter the whole spectrum of commercial customers and partly commercial, there is a good return of 15% IRR, and there is a very, very good cash flow. As I said, the cash revenue actually doubles in 2 years' time, and these calculations have been revisited many times with many different models. So similarly, from a concessionaire or a private sector perspective, the equity they bring in is being structured with the debt and equity like this, and also they will also have a repayment period which they to the private finance that they bring in. And we hope this time private finance really comes into the market, because so far in the water sector, less of private finance has really come in India, except for certain Namami Ganga projects or wastewater treatment plants. Nothing really has happened in the water management part of it. And we hope through this is a structured contract like this with a good concession, there will be private participation too, who can also lead the consortium also. So the revenue risk primarily is not much there in these customers, but we go down the line to the domestic connection, to the 10 million, to the other 100, the next 100,000, and to the total 1.25 million base, which will keep on increasing as the city grows. There is some revenue risk to the utility themselves, but there is also a risk to the concessionaire here, partially because if his access doesn't function, if he is not able to read the meter in time, if 95% uptime is not there in any of the key parameters, he's not going to get paid. So his money is going to get stuck in this. So that is what is a big challenging thing, but we have also made it. Lots of good in the pricing also, we have done it in such a way that there could be good excitement for the private people to come in. So the inflation risk and the interest risk is being taken by the government itself or the utility itself. Now, Government of India has come out with various schemes. I told you about this flagship program. Our program of India, the Jal Jeevan, which is for the rural, which is a very, very big success, and the urban water, which is now Amrut 2, $40 billion, it's been very well conceived. And the manual, the guideline, technical engineering manual, the operation maintenance manual, and the management manual, which has all come out with 33 important chapters in it, gives a good guideline to each of the states or ULBs who want to migrate the process to a more advanced system, and there is money available. So 10% of this money, that is roughly about 8,000 odd crores or $2 billion roughly, is available for these type of projects in the country. It could be treated water, which India is giving a lot of importance to recycle and reuse of water. But even these type of projects where there is revenue improvement through better lowering NRW, better collection efficiency, and better billing system can also lend its support here. And as much as 30% project cost of viability gap funding is available. On top of it, the caveat is actually the new scheme is going to be introduced very shortly for reduction of NRW. And I'm sure across India, people are going to start jumping on it, because today the big programs of 24/7 water supply, either as a pilot or a full city, there are only a few. Only a few states have shown progress, primarily Karnataka, Bangalore and outside, a little bit in Nagpur, something in Orissa, and something in Coimbatore, one of the second largest city in Tamil Nadu. But it's really not taken off to the expectation, and it has been happening over the last 7-8 years' time, actually. So this additional dosage of funding that will come into the states will be as a catalyst for showing the reduction of NRW. And that is why I think the IWA program itself was so conceived that I thought that I should be able to talk a bit about this. So we have incorporated, when we go around India, India is a very vast country. There are so many people building infrastructure projects, but unfortunately, when it comes to system approach of water balance, ability to do billing system, ability to install meter, read them, there are very few people. We are coming out with a project, say, of $35–40 million, and we are not able to, most of the so-called concessionaires in India are not able to meet the technical requirements of the pre-qualification here. So we actually watered down this after a lot of discussion. I'm sure all the other states will also do in the same way. So we said operation maintenance, even if you show 10,000, not even, you don't have to show 100,000 or 200,000. And mind you, each city in India will have at least 1 million connections. Each large city in India could have anywhere between 0.5 to 1 million connections. So, these type of things, these type of contracts which are performance-based would get evolved as it goes. Similarly, we are allowing consortiums to come in. That means a technology provider would be there, and there would be a EPC contractor, because it will involve a lot of physical civil works that are involved in building chambers, making the pipes, excavating and putting them, and things like that. So we have kept this in par with the Indian norms of what we typically do. And so we have kept the turnover and the net worth and ability to have cash in the system of various companies to fund. And also they should be healthy enough to rate private finance. So they require that balance sheets to be good. So we have talked, and we found that at least there are about 8 or 10 good people available, and many international ones too are interested. So if you really see...
Ashok,
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ashok. Do you mind wrapping up in a couple of minutes, just so we've got a bit of time?
Yeah. Another 5 minutes. Another 5 minutes. I will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So, and then, we have come out with a concession contract wherein, we have put this at the draft stage, but I'm sure all the cities in India, it's quite well documented now, the concessions in highway, but in water sector, it is still evolving, and we have actually added a lot of things. This is a very important part of the mass meter as a service thing, where we are giving them 60% fixed and 40% variable, where efficiency, meter reading, response time, functioning is very important. So they don't get paid that variable amount if they don't have 95% up, 95% or above in terms of efficiency or uptime. For example, in efficiency of handling customer complaints, meter reading, response times to new water connections, functioning meters, almost 95%. And that is the type of guarantee we are taking. And we are making each of the meter manufacturers to also sign a memorandum of understanding with the potential concessionaire to really give the guarantees on a back-to-back basis. So I finished with that. I thank you, Joe. I hope I was on time, exceeded my time.
Yes, thanks, Ashok. Yeah, great. So if anyone's got any questions, now's the time to drop them in the chat. I think we've got 7-8 minutes to squeeze them in. So there's one from Kate here, Ashok. Is it expected that this program will result in continuous supply? If so, is there a timescale for that?
Can you come again, Joe, please?
So, yeah, if you check the chats, it's in there. But it says, is it expected that this program will result in continuous supply? If so, is there a timescale for that?
Yeah, there have been out of 500 large cities in India and 4,830 urban local bodies, some 300 people have actually signed on with this project, wherein they have said that they actually started the implementation and they have been paid the funds. They have been given the funds to start the implementation. So many of them are at advanced levels, and some of them at 50% level, some of them 80% level. We hope in the next 3 years that from most of the bigger cities and the smaller ones will be the first ones who will be converting themselves from intermittent system to the pressurized 24/7 system. That's what and the program would go on for the next 3 years, because still there is a top up of under $20 billion available for for deploying them in all these type of performance-based contracts. So it will be there for another 3 years' time, Joe.
Okay, hope that answers your question, Kate. I can see that Pankaj Jumar wants to ask a question, so I'm going to unmute you. Should get a notification.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for unmuting. Ashok sir, don't you think that very limited players, 8 to 12 players in India, country like India, so there is an urgent need to build the capacity to bring in the players in the system to achieve the targets. So I think major work is required to first build the capacity of our players. Please share your views.
Yeah, very correct, sir, Mr. Pankaj. I do endorse it, because I've sat down in 2 or 3 major workshops the last 2 years with respect to these requirements. And we find that hardly there are people. 8-10 is too small to build India's infrastructure, especially in the areas of water management, and that too on NRW reduction. That is why Government of India has kept the things open today. You'll be very happy to note there is a city called Shimla in the hills of Himalayas, which is a fairly million-plus city. They have given the entire concession for 20 years to Suez recently, about a month back. Similarly, Nagpur has been given to Veolia and Coimbatore again. And then there are about 4 cities in Karnataka, Hubli, Dharwad, Gulbarga, which has been awarded to the Indian big EPC infrastructure player called Larsen & Toubro. But we need more players. Unfortunately, we are not having that. And that is one of the main objectives of the government right now, is to build heavily on capacity training. I have my colleague also here, Sanjay Dahasasra sir, who's attending this meeting here. We have trained, at least myself and him, would have trained more than about 400 engineers the last 4-5 months. We need to make them to come out with projects which are based on water management principle, customer interaction principles, ability to reduce NRW, and to imbibe new technologies. So India will be there shortly, but still this is a gray area. And that is why the government has now taken a step to form association. Now, ministry is going to form an association called Utility Water Association. Similar to IWA International, we are going to form, where we are going to make the contractors part of the whole thing. And that is why centers of excellence have been opened today with Israel, with IIT Madras, with Roorkee, with ASCII, and people like that who are being asked to do this capacity building training. But that is not enough, whatever we are doing. We need to do a lot more. And there is a big opportunity, especially for my friends from the IWA community across the world. India is the next big growth area for water. And if you come with the right structure, come with the right partner, you will have many benefits of it. I agree with you, Pankaj, that having 8 or 10 people for the size of India is too low.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to join hand with you to increase the numbers.
Joe, anything else, Joe?
Yeah, okay, there's a few more in the chat.
I'll read it.
One question, sorry, just trying to go back to it then. What are the future plans for utilizing data from smart water meters for predictive consumption? And what guidelines should software companies follow to develop effective AI machine learning models?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would urge you to really read the new Indian guideline. I can send it to you, Joe. You can give it to all of them. I will send you today itself. We have introduced analytics, AI models, digital twins, and today at least 4 or 5 projects in these areas have already taken off. I'm telling you, this is going to be a huge thing that is going to happen. There are very many Indian startups, very many good Indian companies. There are big international players who have all shown interest in this particular thing. And Government of India is giving a lot of motivation, especially to the startups from India. There are over 100 startups which have been working on it, and some small orders have been given as POCs and pilots, paid pilots. Actually, Government of India has funded those projects. But I think the bigger players can actually come in. The big players in this sectors, the big OEM players in this sector would come in very shortly, and the market is really evolving to the digital initiatives today. You know, this is the only catching game India can do. India actually is very primitive in water. Somebody asked a question some few minutes back in the chat saying that when will the program, will it ensure that it will go to continuous water or something like that? It is expected to give continuous supply. We are far-fetched from that. So we are still in the Stone Age, but we are very advanced country in IT, telecommunication, electricity, in our infrastructure, ports, airports are some of the world-class ones that we have built. Unfortunately, we missed the bus in water a couple of years back, but now we are trying to catch up. So still we are in the industry level 1. But if India has to migrate to developing and emerging markets of industry level 3 or 4, this digital initiative, which India is well positioned, will be the game changer for India. That's what I'm very bullish on that point, and that is why I do all my research and work only in that area. This is the only bridge that can take us to the level 3, which will be equal to the emerging or some of the developed markets too in the next few years' time. And we are backed very well by finance. That's what I wanted to tell you. There is a question here from Rohan. Can I take that question if you don't mind, Joe?
Yeah. Just before that one, Banu Prakash, sorry if I pronounced that name incorrectly, has a question he wants to ask. So maybe if we let him go first.
Yes, sir. Ashok sir, good afternoon. This is Bhanu here. I'm
Yeah.
representing what Vasalap IT Solution Private Limited. Sir, actually, we
Yes.
are doing the project in Government of Karnataka for the Urban
Mm.
Development Department. It's for the same, sir, 24/7 water supply project in 8 towns, funded by the ADB. And we are the startup company who are giving the IT solution for these 8 towns, from volumetric, billing and collection, accounting management, MIS, GS, NRW, KPA, SLB, asset management. The whole project is completely integrated solution. I understood most of your problem statements, sir. The solution which we are providing to state government, it's readily available. I mean, we are deploying and we are
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
the
I
result.
know about Vasar Lab. I know your MD also. But let me tell
Yes,
you
sir.
one thing. Proof of the pudding is implementing it and seeing the benefits of it. You can
Yes,
say
sir.
the platform is ready, but the water domain is not all that simple. It cannot
Yes, sir.
marry straight away an IT solution, a vanilla IT solution. And there have been so many people across the world working in this type of domains. So these type of big tickets jobs have started coming from Delhi, Bombay, Chennai will also come in a big way in digital initiatives. But I know you people have to deliver this on the ground. There's lots of gaps still there in not only, I'm not telling you, but across the country. How many flow meters really are working? How many basic metering is as good as the data you give them? No? How many of them are you having control on them? It's not possible. So there is lots of work India has to do to call ourselves. The platform might be ready conceptually. All the big players have a platform, but you have to show implementing and delivering the KPI. That's very important. Okay, sir.
Understood,
Thank
sir.
you.
Sir, what I, yes, sir.
Yeah, please. Not in this dialogue, in this forum. I think, Joe, you take over,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, so we're just about out of time, but if you're okay, Ashok, we'll take this last question. So it's from Rohan, and will there be guidelines for city level water monitoring drafted or any plan from Centre for Urban Water Monitoring?
It's already there, Mr. Rohan. It's already there. And all these guidelines are written. In fact, Jal Jeevan put it up in a very good document, but they have not done that good level of implementation on the digital initiatives. But over here, we are very careful. We have been conservative. And it's a very well enunciated document. Please go through them and try to offer and bundle your solutions, which can really come in. Because I have not seen very many tech companies coming forward, especially the large telecommunication operators coming forward in India. Unless you come forward and marry, because the biggest buying still is happening from the government. So you have to get there you have to have the G2G business or the B2G business is going to be the biggest business. So this is very, very important. It's all enunciated. Everything is given, including NB-IoT applications. Once the license is given to that, it's also approved for that application. I hope I answered your question.
I think it sounds like you did from his comment. Okay, thanks, Ashok. We'll end that now. So thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate you taking the time out. This webinar is recorded and will go straight to YouTube. So we'll share that link at some point in time. So thank you very much. Thanks again, Ashok.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.